This is the Kitchen Sink WP Podcast, episode 330.
I program my own computer.
We have a server crash, 404 error, page not found, links aren't working, system is crashing, system is crashing, system is crashing.
Your old HTML website, barely alive. We have the technology. We have WordPress. A new website, better than it was before. Better, stronger, faster. Why, hello everybody. This is Adam Silver, the host of the Kitchen Sink WP podcast. Thanks for being here. Let's get started. All right, upcoming events. Only one next week. We have WordCamp Philadelphia. That is September 26th. It's online, of course, because nothing's in person still. So I haven't been to WordCamp Philly since it was WordCamp US. It was awesome, so check that out. It's online, and I very well may register for that, so check that out. That is it. I think, it's it for the upcoming events. Moving on to segment one. In the news, two things to talk about here. Yoast acquired Duplicate Post, and they brought on their creator, Enrico Battocchi, as their senior developer. So he's going to continue to work on it under the Yoast brand. I guess maybe it'll be called Duplicate Post by Yoast. That's kind of... Duplicate Post by Yoast. I like that. It sounds good. Anyway, so congratulations to that acquisition and merger, if you will, acquisition. Anyway, also last week, PHP celebrated 25 years. This week, WordPress bumps the minimum PHP recommendation to 7.2. So if you're running old WordPress, by the way, like 5.x, update to 7, please. 7.1, 7.2, 7.3, even 7.4. I'm running 7.2, 7.3 pretty much everywhere. It's so much faster, so much better than 5 was, so, and it's more secure, etc. So definitely do that. All right, that's it. Yeah, that's it in the news. Like I said, two things. Segment 2, the meat and potatoes of this week's show. It's an interview. This week I interviewed Joe Simpson. Actually, just got done interviewing him. It was a great conversation. We actually spoke for about 30 minutes and another 30 minutes after the show, but just about life and stuff. But a great story, how he got into WordPress, I think, and just very giving individual. So take a listen now, and I'll come back with the tip and tool of the week. All right, here's Joe. This week, I am joined by Joe Simpson. Joe is a front-end web developer, a Section 508 accessibility advocate, a WordPress community lead organizer, and a speaker, and just an overall great guy. Welcome to the Kitchen Sink WP podcast, Joe.
Hey, Adam. Thanks. Good to be here. Enjoying this beginning to this heat wave here in California. Unfortunately, things heat up here in the Santa Clarita Valley, and I'm trying to stay cool. So it's perfect that we're doing this early in the morning.
It is early for you, 3 hours behind me, but as I moved. But I always start interviews by telling the audience how I might know the guest, if I know the guest, and I usually do. In this case, we know each other from WordCamp Los Angeles. I'm not sure which year, and I think you might know the year. How do you remember meeting me, I suppose?
Well, for me, it was pretty dramatic. And I always look, and when I tell this story, it sounds a lot more dramatic. But for me personally, it was an incredibly moving experience. I was on a leave of absence. I had just had a procedure to unblock 2 arteries.
Oh, wow.
On, I think it was June 11th. And I think either July or August, there was a meetup in downtown Los Angeles. And at this time, I had decided over the next 3 months, I was going to take a leave of absence. And I was going to only do the things I love. And one of those things that I loved from my before my heart event was WordPress. And I had never gone to a meetup. And that evening I decided to go to one downtown, and you were there. And I think it was maybe Steve Harvey was with you. And you guys were talking about WordCamp Los Angeles and needing volunteers.
Okay.
And just hearing you speak, and you're always so funny and always so thorough. I said, hey, I'm going to do this. And at that moment I volunteered. And then later when we had the WordCamp, you were so helpful. You always took time to talk to me during the WordCamp. I was like, wow, this is cool. I think I want to do this.
So was that 2016?
2017.
2017. So the second was that 20. So when did I guess I was the lead 2016 and 2017. I think I did both. I did 2 years in a row. I mean, I was on that team, part of that community, for like 6 or 7 years. But yeah, I can't remember. So 2017. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I'm always flattered and honored to hear people credit me with bringing people in. But I mean, it's refreshing. But I'm like, yeah, it's hard to remember. It's especially in Southern California. It's a big community.
Yeah. It's and that's the amazing thing. I mean, there's 5 WordCamps in Los Angeles now, in Southern California.
Right.
If you take San Diego, Riverside. I mean, there's so much going on and such a great community. And it's all connected. Like everyone knows everyone, and it's like family.
Yeah. So, okay. So you say it's connected, but for those who don't know you, the other question I always ask is, who are you? How did you get into WordPress? What's the little origin story there?
Well, I always talk, and I have 2 runs in WordPress, and I always describe it that way: pre-event and post-event. Pre-event, we had a lead developer and a CSS goddess at our company at Metro Los Angeles. We're one of the largest public transit agencies in the country, if not the world. Our CSS goddess and lead developer both left our agency within a month of each other. And I inherited a WordPress site with the Headway theme framework from way back in the day.
Headway!
2010. For those that know that, they're hardcore WordPressers. And I was tasked with redesigning it. It didn't have a child theme. It had all the no-nos included, and I had to build my first child theme. So that's how I got started. Fortunately, that year we had budget. We decided, since we lost our lead developer, we were going to move it over to managed hosting. So we had the budget to move it over to WordPress VIP, which is sort of enterprise level, high-end WordPress service that requires you to be very disciplined, commit changes in a certain way. And I had no idea what any of that stuff meant.
Wow.
Yeah, we had a little budget also to send me to training. And out of all the trainings, I went to the WordPress intensive developer workshop up in Napa.
Oh my gosh,
where all the core folks come and the top developers of WordPress come. And me, as a front end person who only did HTML kind of things back at that time, I was overwhelmed. I had never set up a virtual box, and that was like our first task. Everybody there helped me. It was such an incredible experience. I was like, wow, this WordPress thing is pretty amazing. And that sort of started me. And that was how I first got into it back in 2010.
Wow, I did not know that. So it's awesome that you came from Headway. I mean, I was a big Headway proponent and advocate, and that's what I used for probably the first, I don't know. I mean, until I switched to Beaver Builder. But yeah, for the longest time, I know Grant, I know Clay, and that was because I didn't want to go to Thesis. That's a whole separate story. But yeah, I went to Headway because I could do what I wanted with it. I could make things look the way I wanted, and it worked for my client base. Interesting. I did not know that. And then the fact that you guys went from Metro to VIP, that's a big step.
Yeah, it was incredible. I think at that time we had no development support. So we were thinking we want to make sure when we have a problem or a question, someone will walk us through it. Even now, if you don't get the right kind of hosting plan, you're sort of on your own.
Yeah.
But we wanted to have the ability to reach out to someone. All those folks that I met at the intensive workshop were part of the support team as well. So it was incredible. It really got me up and running and working sort of in a disciplined way with WordPress.
Right. So based on that, so you still work at LA Metro?
Yes.
So the other question,
almost 30 years later.
Wow, that's impressive too. That doesn't happen anymore.
Yeah.
So what is your day-to-day there now?
Well, we still have a small team. We're part of a digital strategy team now that's part of marketing. And my role there, I manage our WordPress hosting situation. We have about 12 to 15 WordPress sites. I think we have a couple in development that are going to go live soon. So I manage that WordPress blog network, as well as support our day-to-day operation of all our digital properties. So we have a mobile app. We have our mothership site, which isn't in WordPress, but right now, earlier this week, I did a big presentation on moving our mothership site over into WordPress. So if that all happens, we'll be entirely WordPress.
What's that site in now, if I may ask?
It's Django Python. Okay. It's a custom build. Our lead developer who left when I mentioned earlier, he came back and then he just left again. So now we have the opportunity to move it into WordPress. He wasn't a big WordPress fan. So now that he's gone, we're considering it at least.
Right. It's not the right tool for every little need. I mean, I get it. Some people have a bias. Some people don't. I mean, we'll talk about biases after this. Yeah, I get it. But for your perspective, do you want to move it over to WordPress and why?
Oh, definitely. Definitely. A couple of the things that we've always talked about from team to team, we've had different management teams, is making sure that our department clients and our marketing team, which is responsible for our external message to our customers, we wanted for them to have access and be able to update the website. They still don't have it all these years later. Right. And WordPress CMS is incredibly solid. So
right. No, I agree. I see it as the end all. Well, not the end all. I see it as the appropriate tool for most of the things that are out there. It is what it is. It's just, of course, pure developers may have different opinions on that, just because that's what pure developers and some people have that certain mindset. So, I wanted to circle back around to your involvement with community and then WordCamps as well. So you took the leave of absence, you came and volunteered at WordCamp LA, and since then you've been on fire in the community in SoCal. Even though I left, what's going on there now, and what's your take on kind of doing things? You were going to be the lead organizer. Well, you were the lead organizer for WordCamp Santa Clarita. Was it last year? Was this the first year? Or was it last year? Was the first year?
This is the second year. The first year was in person, and this year we had to postpone, but then we decided to go ahead and did it online.
Because that's right. You reached out. I was going to come out and do this show actually, or do a mini keynote, do something with you guys. But then because of COVID, it went online. How did that go versus year one to year two, in person versus virtual?
Well, I think this is the millionth time I've shared this story, but it's always great. I always think of it in movie terms. The first year was an incredible accomplishment. We were a small team. I think a year and a half after I started my meetup, we did our first WordCamp. I call that Aliens. Like when most people first saw Aliens, we were like, wow, that's an incredible movie. But then Aliens 2 came out, which was a totally different style of movie, but it was even better to some folks. So to me, the online experience was just as rewarding because it opened up our event to the world, not just our local community. We had volunteers from Bangladesh. We had attendees from Africa. So that was amazing, doing the community thing on a global scale. So it was a lot different, but a lot better.
So, but was there anything not as good or anything lost?
Well, I think, unfortunately, we lost a couple of speakers that felt like their presentation would only work in a in-person setting. And a couple of volunteers for the same reason. A lot of folks really look forward to the in-person experience of a WordCamp because community is everything. I know I'm working on the WordCamp US team, and I've dealt with Michelle Frechette, and I said, I've never really met you. We've met online a few times at these meetings, but when I see you, I'm going to give you a hug because that's what I always do to friends. So it's not having that connection is what's really missing.
Yeah, I really miss it. I mean, I've only been to one WordCamp this year. This will probably be the lowest WordCamp number I've ever been to. I mean, even the first year I went to 2 or 3. I mean, LA. Yeah, I went to LA, San Francisco. No, to LA and Orange County. And then from that point on, I always doubled or tripled the number. This year I went to Miami, and then we got locked down. So yeah, I think I love in person. I can do it virtual. Sure, I've paid attention to a few. I log in, I log out. It's just different. But I like getting away from home. I'm not gonna lie. I want to take some time away from the office. I don't take the laptop with me to the camp because I want to be present and be engaged with people like yourself and Michelle. I know Michelle in person as well. She's awesome. And I think she's our lead for WordCamp US as a total side note. On the we're on communications team, right? So. Yeah. Okay. But you had a good. Do you know what your turnout numbers were for the virtual WordCamp?
Well, the numbers were actually larger.
Yeah.
I think our first year in person we had 165 total, but since you offered it to a larger audience in terms of ticket numbers, I think we were 560 tickets, and then I think in terms of views, we were close to 8,000 page views that day. Wow, so that's impressive. That site was sort of viral. Yeah, so it was incredible. Yeah, it's a different experience, but it was different in a good way.
Yeah. What do you think is going to happen? What's your take on moving forward? I mean, let's say 2021. You think we'll go back in person?
Well, I'm hoping. Yeah, I'm hoping. But I think one thing that would be great is when I did my leave of absence during my second run in WordPress, I did WordCamp US virtually. I couldn't travel at the time. And that was an incredible experience because of the way they did it. Just being there. I think one thing that we can incorporate in our in-person events is, it didn't happen at Santa Clarita. We had 2 times during the day where all of our speakers congregated in a Zoom room.
Okay, right.
And the storytelling and the sharing and that point of the WordCamp was some of the most fun that we had that day. So I would love to see some sort of online presence at every WordCamp, whether it's in person or not. Okay. So that people that can't be there in person, especially like US, is such an incredible event. Yeah. That would be nice because a lot of people do watch it online.
Absolutely. I've been very fortunate in my travels, and I've attended all WordCamp US's. And prior to that, I was at the last WordCamp San Francisco, which became US.
Which is right. That's
and I was planning on going to Europe, WordCamp over in Porto this year, but that obviously got canceled as well. So. Interesting. All right. So I have a couple more questions for you. I want to be respectful of your time.
Sure.
Currently, as we talked, so you and I talked about 2 weeks ago when I reached out to see if you want to be on the show, and I had a reason for it as well, as you know. I'm not gonna hide it behind it. State of the world, the world as a whole right now. You're 60 plus years old. You look younger than me, by the way.
Oh, actually, you added 4 years. I'm 55. I'll be 56.
I'm so sorry. Oh no. I feel terrible. I'm going to edit that out. No, I'm not going to edit it out.
That's fine. I don't know. That's even better because a lot of times people will tell me, I've even heard 40 as of last year.
You're 54?
I'm 55. I'll be 56 in September.
Oh, when we spoke last week, 2 weeks ago, I wrote down, for some reason, I don't know why, I wrote down a different number. Let me fix that.
Maybe because I was born in the 60s.
I don't know. So you're only, you're a couple years older than me. Okay, anyway. Yeah. So, you mentioned, we spoke last, like I said, 2 weeks ago, but I'm curious about your day-to-day experience in your world, if you will. In your own neighborhood. You've lived there for 20 years. You told me that story about the looks you get. And I want to get your thoughts on that as far as the state of the world that we're in right now.
Well, I mean, it really hit, I think the day after we talked in Santa Clarita, and you mentioned you grew up in the area.
Yeah.
Santa Clarita is an up and coming neighborhood. It's fast. I think it's one of the fastest growing areas in Los Angeles, but it's a relatively conservative area. It's majority white, and it's an incredible place to live. But from time to time, I get these reminders that I am different. I think the day after we talked, there was going to be a rally in Santa Clarita,
mm-hmm.
and I decided I had to go.
Right.
And the reason was the things that were happening in the world. And I have a 22-year-old son,
mm-hmm.
and he just graduated from college, and I'm really concerned for him. And you've all heard in the news that we all have to have that talk
mm-hmm.
with our sons, specifically about when you're out in the world, and if you get stopped by the police, you have to behave a certain way, because it has happened to me. And a lot of times I get funny looks. For example, I do a walk 5 minutes before sunrise. And I do that here in Castaic because I'm a heart patient. I'm one of the bullet points in the COVID-19 high risk group.
Right.
So I try to do it early before it gets too hot, so that I don't see as many folks that I would have to interact with. During those times, it's just before the sun comes up, so it's sort of dusky or a little dim. There's been 3 instances since the pandemic where folks have stopped their car in the middle of the street to watch me go by, kind of thing. And so those are reminders that even though I've lived here longer than they have, because the way our hill works is they built up the hill. I'm midway through the hill. So as I walk up the hill, those houses weren't there when I was walking 10 or 15 years ago.
Right.
So those same people are looking at me like I don't belong. So I get those reminders. I always keep them to myself. And I think you were the first person outside of my family that knows that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a big deal to me. And I know the fact that you even reached out to me meant a lot, because I could see the emotion on your face on how the recent events have affected you. So I appreciate you talking about it. But like I said, I was really concerned about doing this because I've never really put that out into the world
right.
as if, I need the world to do something about it. It's something I've always had to deal with, and I sort of deal with it despite.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it was on my mind for a while. I'm like, what do I do? How can I help? What's my role here? If anything, and obviously just listening and having a conversation with you. So I'm curious. So it's unfortunate that is the world we're in right now, or it has been obviously from the get-go. What are your thoughts and or experiences about diversity or bias in the WordPress community, if anything? I'm curious.
Well, to me, and I think I mentioned when we first had this conversation, WordPress has actually been my respite from the real world. I'm in a corporate environment. It's big business. It's a political entity.
Mm-hmm.
Our board of directors are political. So a lot of decisions that are made aren't really made for the best interest of our customers. Sometimes there's, climbing the corporate ladder. All those things play into the day-to-day there. But like I mentioned, when I first got into WordPress, the community, and those of us that are in the community knows that it's a community with a capital C for a specific reason.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many people that are nurturing. And I really needed that 3 years ago. I mean, I was at the point where after my procedure, I couldn't get out of bed without possibly fainting. That's the point where my body had been stripped down to. So it's always been a place where if I had a question when I first started a meetup, there was somebody on the other side that nurtured me and answered my questions and gave me the tools to be a better WordPress community leader. So to me, I see those lessons as things that I could use in other places in my life. So it's always been a positive place. Now, don't get me wrong. I haven't really experienced all the other, types of people that could possibly be a different experience. But to me, I'm focusing on the positive, and I'm focusing on giving back. When I first got back into WordPress, I redid a site for free kind of. I've always been about giving back. Right. So to me, it's just been a part of who I've been, and WordPress sort of accentuates that.
Right. So your experience is that you really haven't seen a bias or anything from your experience in the community, because, I'm sure people have. From my experience, I've witnessed some things as the, white male. My eyes have been opened a lot, but my big push in the past 2 years has been to make sure of diversity for women speakers. That's always been my thing. Not thinking about color. Now, obviously, I do. And that's why I reached out. It still is uncomfortable, but necessary to have these conversations. So let me ask you this, then. What would you say if someone else came to you, or if you had a moment to tell people, like, what would, from let's say from an agency perspective, let's say someone's running an agency, let's say even me, what do we do? How's a better way to approach this in our day-to-day running of the agencies, working with clients, people who are outside of WordPress but are part of a business? You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think all I can ask is what you initially did. Mm-hmm. The fact that you even considered reaching out to me to have a conversation, that's the biggest step. Because I think so many times, you mentioned in terms of diversity with women, you probably never considered it until it was brought to your attention.
Right.
Now that this subject has been brought to our everyone's attention, how has it affected what you're going to do in November? How has it affected how you're going to hire moving forward? Right. How has it affected the people that you decide to mentor? All those things. I mean, to me, just the fact that you consider it means that you're aware. And I joke with my son all the time, and I have a daughter as well. And I always tell them things that I think are challenges for them that they're going to need to overcome so that they can become more aware. And now that I can see my son 5 years after being in college, I see that now he looks at things a little different. And education is the main thing. I mean, I think that now that you're aware, maybe you'll consider, if you're going to hire someone, maybe consider someone of color, and bring them in, even if, and I think it's just think of your path here to where you are today. Mm-hmm. You probably had a lot of folks along the way that took time to nurture you or educate you on how to, the type of person that you become today. That's all it is. And I think if we reach out and sort of help others and nurture them, it's not like we're taking someone and paying their way, this kind of thing. It's sort of like you're paying forward. Right. Your experience could help someone else grow and become more independent.
Yeah. I mean, ironically enough, as far as the gender biases, I mean, everyone who works, I say for me, but all the people I employ as a contractor, I have 4 women and 1 male, 1 guy, as far as how they identify. Again, I'm from the perspective of, I think I grew up very lucky with parents who were, we just had a basic rule set, accept, period, for the most part, that was it. My dad's office is in San Fernando. San Fernando is 99% of Hispanic descent.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah, I catch the train from there sometimes when I'm running late.
Yeah,
I know exactly
so again, my dad's still there. He's 89 years old. He's a lawyer. He has his office on South Brand Boulevard. So I used to go there all the time, and it doesn't matter. I was actually bused into a school at one point back in 5th grade into Morningside Elementary, for integrations, because back then, Los Angeles Unified was very specific to your neighborhoods, so they wanted to integrate more. Anyway, yeah, it's having that conversation, getting to realize where we need to see things slightly differently, or not slightly, see things differently in a big way. And I think now is the time. Now is the precipice is here. So,
yeah, I think I was just gonna, if you don't mind, I was gonna jump in and add. I think one thing that was exciting to me when I got back in the WordPress community, I hadn't seen Black men on stage. So one of the things I wanted to do was speak at a WordCamp.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually I did that. So, I mean, I do think it's important that I continue to look out for those opportunities. And I know for me on our team here, we're a very small team. I think we built a camp where in a lot of instances, people may not have gone through with that process. And we've, I think 3 of our team, our initial organizing team, the first year, it was half women, half men. And it's always been an emphasis, I think, in terms of our speakers. I think our speaker lineup the first year was, I think it was 48%. We had one woman drop at the end, or we would have had a 50-50 split.
Mm-hmm.
So it's always been part of my nature to do that.
Right.
And I think I don't think it should be something that we should have to force people. It should just be natural.
Yeah. But, it should be. I agree with you 100%. Sadly, it's not.
Mm-hmm.
And mm-hmm. The only thing I want to add to that is, I used to live on the West Coast and now I live in the South. And there are some definite differences here for sure,
mm-hmm.
without going any deeper. I think people can figure out what I'm talking about, but there's definitely differences. I live in North Carolina, and though I live in a very educated area, an open as well as diverse area outside of Raleigh, many parts of North Carolina and the South are not as progressive as I would like to see. So, yeah.
Yeah, I know. One thing that I'm proud of, and it's not something that I pat myself on the back. I know a few people that have come up to me after seeing me speak at a camp, and one gentleman, he started his meetup here in Bakersfield. He restarted it because he said, "Joe, I heard your message, and it inspired me to restart my WordPress meetup with a little more vigor." Or one of my organizers saw me at a camp and said it inspired me to get involved. I mean, I think that's what I'd like
mm-hmm.
to see as a side effect of what I do. Like I said, it's not that I'm a Black person. I just see myself as someone that's giving back and hoping that other people will see it and do the same.
Okay.
And if we all do that, we can make change, positive change,
awesome.
In this country, especially where it comes to race.
Absolutely. I agree. Well, that was very interesting. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure we could talk for a long time. You and I, we can just keep going. I love talking to you. I really do. So, but I want to be respectful. I have one more question for you. It's the final one here.
Sure.
The tools. Sure. We always like to talk about tools. People want to know, what do you use, in your day-to-day running the WordPress stuff that you do? What are your 3 favorite tools that you can't live without, or you want to share?
Okay. Well, my journey, I started as a designer and turned web designer. So I love tools that make the process similar to what I did as a designer in terms of creating an idea and working it through in terms of process. So I use Slack, Asana, Figma for some UX work. So I love those tools. But in the WordPress space specifically, I love the page builders that allow you a lot of drag and drop capability. I love where they're going.
Mm-hmm.
It's sort of like the themes are going to become something different after the advent of Gutenberg. It looks like themes are going in a different way. So I love where Elementor is going, and that's a plugin that I love using because of its flexibility, and it seems like it's consistently changing and evolving to add new features. So I love that they're always working it to better themselves. I love using Jetpack because it reminds me of Photoshop. It has a whole bunch of small plugins that create the overall whole. I love that one. So I would say those 2 are specific. And then Yoast, of course, some sort of SEO tool, because I think crafting your content and getting it to place is a science, as well as, a lot of times we build pages based on what we think folks will like. So I love the science or the data behind sites. So those are important.
So Elementor, Jetpack, and Yoast. Got it.
Yes.
Okay. Awesome. All right. Final thing. Where can people find you, follow you, reach out and stay connected to you online?
Well, I keep it simple. Back in the day when you would create an email, it would be 314. It's just Joe Simpson Jr. So Joe Simpson Jr. on Gmail, Joe Simpson Jr. on social media. That's where you can find me.
Awesome. I'll link to all that in your tools in the show notes. Thank you so much. I really do appreciate you. I appreciate your message, and I appreciate you taking the time to be here on the podcast. And I hope to see you in the future in person sometime. I mean, as soon as we can get out of houses and whatnot and have WordCamps in person and meetups. So.
Oh, definitely. I know you were planning on a couple of and I listen to your podcast all the time. I know a couple of the events that you said you wanted to go to. I was going to be like, for instance, Europe. I was going to be at Europe this year. So we would have seen, and at US, we would have seen each other. So I'm sure we'll see each other soon.
Definitely.
When it's safe.
Definitely. Absolutely.
Of course.
Stay safe, and we'll talk to you soon.
Okay, see you, Adam.
Okay, bye-bye. Again, thanks to Joe for coming on the show and having the discussion. His story, his background is fascinating. I didn't know some of that, and I feel bad that I aged him. I really do. We spoke about that after the show as well. And I think having the conversation, like he said, having those uncomfortable conversations need to happen. So I really appreciate him taking the time there and in putting it out there. So again, follow him over at Joe Simpson Jr. on Twitter, over at web. He's on joesimpsonjr.info. So check that out. All right, moving on. Segment 3, tip of the week. This week, it's a plugin that someone recommended regarding adding attributes to images. It's a long title. It's called Auto Image Attributes from Filename with Bulk Updater. Because lately I've been doing some stuff with some photography and looking to add things in a bulk way. So you can set the image file name in the image title. You can image the caption, the description, the alt text, etc. So a lot of things you can do with this plugin. It's free. It's in the repository. I'll put a link in the show notes. Check it out if you're looking to do that type of work. All right, that is it this week. Let me wrap it up here. If you have any questions, go ahead and send it in via email, adam@kitchensinkwp.com, or use the speak pipe function of the website. We'd love to have your voice on an upcoming Q&A show. If you want to support the show, become a Patreon and want to buy me a coffee, there's a button on the website for that too. You can sponsor as well. There's a form on the website for inquiries on sponsorships. Would love to have you do that. Thanks for listening. See you next week. Now go out and do some awesome things with WordPress. See you later. Bye-bye.